Distilled shenanigans. Distilled shenanigans. Welcome to the next episode in the Gateway Bourbon series. Today, we are going to be talking about Bulleit bourbon. I hope everybody had a good week. I really enjoyed making the Jim Beam episode. Apparently, a lot of you like to mix some Jim Beam and Coke out there. Like I said, it's really good in those drinks because it has that little flavor that kind of bites on through, so that's good. I had a good week. I went out with some friends this last weekend, and somebody told me I should be a life coach because I'm just so positive. And I feel like, my life right now with all the things is like a little bit of a dumpster fire, but feeling inside more like a dumpster fire. But I'm glad that I made that person feel good. So sometimes people just need to hear kind words. But other than that, I'm getting very excited for St. Patrick's Day coming up. I'm trying to put together a little Irish whiskey episode. We'll see if I can do it. I have a busy week for work next week, but we'll see. I'm trying. So today, like I said, Bulleit bourbon. This bad boy right here has the highest rye content of any of the bourbons that we have tasted so far. So we're starting with a mash bill of about 68% corn, 28% rye, and 4% malted barley. So this one's going to drink a little bit more like a rye whiskey because it's so high. I want to say the biggest one that we've had so far, our biggest percentage has been maybe 13 or 14%. And rye brings like a peppery spice to the bourbon, which I really like rye whiskey. This one is kind of an interesting story with the distillery. So Augustus Bulleit brewed the first barrels of we're not talking about beer here. He distilled the first barrels of this whiskey back in 1830, and he distilled until he passed away in 1860. Now, he really liked the rye. His original content had 34% rye in there, and the rest of it was corn. So he really liked it spicy for a bourbon. But the sad part is once he passed away, so did the making of the bourbon. And it wasn't until 1987 when one of his great grandsons decided to resurrect the recipe, kind of changed it to the percentages that we see here today. And the official launch of the bourbon was in 1999. Now, Bulleit is something that we call a sourced whiskey. So that means at that time when they were making that, they didn't necessarily have a distillery to make it. So they had a different distillery make their bourbon. And that for a long time, that was Four Roses. I'm not sure. Things would get a little muddy on whether or not it's still a sourced bourbon. In 2017, Bulleit built their own distillery and really became a leader on the shelves during that time frame. Bulleit is distributed by one of the largest conglomerates in the world. The rise of that bourbon was really handled through the marketing power of that distributor. Not that it's not a good bourbon all on its own, but it probably wouldn't have risen so quickly and on the shelf so quickly had that distributor not been backing it so heavily before 2020. All right. Let's get down to it. So you can see here, we see if I gotta start putting this in. Can you see this? It has a beautiful auburn color. Oh, the age statement. It doesn't really have an age statement. I've seen some numbers that it was aged 4 years. I've seen some that it can be aged up to 7 years. I have a feeling that they're blending it to flavor and taste a lot like the Maker's Mark bourbon does. So that's why you're not going to see an age statement per se on the bottle. All right, what are we smelling in here? Ooh. I smell oranges. Usually I smell cherries, so this is interesting. Orange. It's almost like an orange cream, so there's got to be vanilla. I don't really smell a whole lot. Oh, maybe some flavors of caramel in there too. Smells absolutely delicious. Right, let's see how this one tastes. Definitely tasting that vanilla and more of a caramel flavor on the front. I don't really taste any of that wonderful orange cream that I was smelling. Definitely feeling the higher rye and the mid palate. Unlike an unbalanced bourbon where you'll really have heat through the whole thing, this is more of like a pepper spice hitting the top of your palate and then finishing out. I don't taste too much oak. It's there in the back flavor, but not overpowering. I would say almost creamy, but not creamy like a weeded bourbon, but smooth and just a hint of sweetness, and not too heavy. As far as the hug, this is kind of like that friend that you haven't seen in a while that's going to come in for the awkward hug and then just kind of lingers there a little longer than you think it should. That's what we have here. Overall, I really like this bourbon. Just like a few days before we went into lockdown, I went to a Bulleit whiskey tasting with a coworker of mine, and that was the first time that I was like, oh, maybe this whiskey isn't so bad. And then, boom, we were down for the count for a while. So I never came back to it. But maybe I should. Maybe I should. Anyway, I am hoping that you learned a little bit about this whiskey. Get to try your hand at a little higher rye percentage with this one. And I'm excited to hopefully bring a little bit of Irish whiskey to you. Next week, we'll kind of take a pause from the Gateway series and move in with the holidays. You can't pass by St. Patrick's Day without some Irish whiskey. We talk a little bit of history and we'll have a good time. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and head on over to my Instagram account. And remember, you only get one shot. Make a top shelf. Cheers.